live with your father and another man, and that's hard as a childhood, although you don't seem to act like it's hard, but you seem like it was very joyful.
It was both. It was both.
And then you're telling me that your father passes away in '94, and his lover of 18 years, and they pass away 6 months apart, and they both died of the same illness, which was AIDS. That's in 1994, and I know back then there was this stigma about that. How did you even find out that your father, if you don't mind me asking, how did you find out that he and his lover had AIDS?
Okay, try to make a short answer. At one point, Chip had a very difficult time with what was happening in his career. And things just weren't happening for him the way he had hoped things had panned out.
So he's singing and
he's singing,
acting.
But what happened was he was promised a contract by a very dear friend. It fell through. It was a second disappointment in his 40s. He just wasn't able to sort of rebound from that as quickly. So the short answer is that he was in Europe doing actually one of my father's shows. And he had been slowly kind of unraveling. And he had a nervous breakdown and was diagnosed as being bipolar. Came back to the States to get him help at St. Vincent's Hospital. He was in and out of that hospital in psych, the psychiatric, building. And when he first went in, he had a phone call. He called us, and my father and my brother and I were all on the phone with him. So we were all in the house together, my father's house in Jersey. And he was in a manic place talking to us, bipolar, manic, depressive. And in this manic state, he told us that he and my father had been HIV positive for 10 years. So that's how we found out.
So your father and he had agreed before maybe to not say anything.
Yeah.
And in a manic state he told you. So you discover this, but neither of them are sick. I mean, you look at them and they're okay.
They're okay.
So how did this, if you don't mind me asking, how does this develop into full-blown illness?
Right. Well, for Chip, the breakdown compromised his immune system and his mental state and everything. So eventually what were only sort of the bipolar and the manic depressive things that we were dealing with, which were huge, from taping his mouth shut because he couldn't stop the chatter and he couldn't stop talking, to seeing devils, and the list goes on and on. Escaping from the hospital in the middle of the night. That was just the mental aspect of things.
That's
and
what
then
you were dealing with. You had to...
Yeah, and my father and I.
Tried to control what was going on there.
Yeah, it was very, very difficult. And he wouldn't take his meds and all of that. So the stress of that on his physical then just sort of left open a Pandora's box of, what AIDS was just waiting to sort of unleash on him.
And your father still working at this time,
My father's still working. He has to. He's the one running the show financially.
What was he doing around this time? What kind of...
He had, let's see, two things. I mentioned to you when Chip had escaped from the hospital in the middle of the night, and actually after we finished that episode, which was almost a whole day of madness, he was running through the streets, and finally got him back into the hospital at 4 o'clock in the morning. We walk out to find the car is towed. And then hours later, my father has to go into the studio with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater and create a new ballet in homage to Dizzy Gillespie, which ends up being one of his greatest works, and the last ballet that he made. And then he reset Bubbling Brown Sugar in Europe for the last time. And those are the two last things that he did.
So he's flying all over the place, even while trying to take care of Chip, and you're helping with that. But how did you sort of see your father and the disease begin to flare up in him?
Well, I guess I didn't. I didn't know until I'd found out that he'd gone on a trip to Aruba to rest, which I strongly encouraged because I knew he was exhausted, just beyond exhaustion, not ill, but exhausted. I think because I didn't probably want to see that he was becoming ill. It was inconceivable to me. But he went on this trip to Aruba, and he fainted on the beach.